Welcome to the Right Hand Roadmap, the podcast for seconds-in-command of founder-led companies. I'm your host, Megan Long, owner of Second First. In each episode, we show you the path to success on your journey as the #2 leader in entrepreneurial companies. I am so happy you are here. Happy New Year, friends. I know we already kicked off the year with our episode with Ryan of Level 10 Leaders, but there's just something special about solo episodes. So I hope you are ready for a whole fresh year of making whatever you want to happen reality. Today, we're going to be talking about something that is going to be key in setting yourself up for success in the new year. Something that you are going to need to do to step into that next phase of your career as a leader, as an executive, and that's delegation. How to actually hand work off to get more done. And I know you've heard about delegation so many times at this point, but let's first talk a little bit about why delegation is so important. For a long time, I got it wrong. I felt really weird about delegating work because I was misunderstanding it as handing off tasks to someone else to do so I wouldn't have to do them. And that's because it was modeled really poorly for me in different roles. And if any of you have worked your way up the ladder, have probably experienced this, where it feels like your superior gives you everything to the point where you're questioning what they even are doing all day. Or you're given tasks that have nothing to do with your job, but they're, quote, delegated to you. And if you're a woman, I guarantee you have been asked to coordinate a lunch order, plan an office party, do some kind of ridiculous domestic office labor. So let's break this mental stigma we have about delegation and reframe it. You have legitimate work or projects on your plate that you know could be done by someone else. When you actually take the time to hand that work off in the right way, not only are you, yes, freeing up your calendar, but you're giving someone else the opportunity to develop, to learn new skills, to add more things to the list of work they're capable of doing. If you were never given new opportunities, you wouldn't be in the leadership position you're in today. So reframe delegation as actually giving someone else an opportunity to grow. I also want to break another false narrative. You tell yourself that it'll be faster and easier if you just do it yourself because you don't like their finished product. They don't do it the way you would do it. So this brings us to our first delegation secret. Before you give feedback, ask yourself, is this preference or is this policy? This has been coming up so often in one-on-one coaching clients. Does the work have to change in order to be correct? Or is it just different than the way you would do it? I'll give you a couple of examples. You ask an employee to put together an agenda for a team meeting and print copies for everyone. They bring you the stack of agendas after they finish, and you look at it and you can already feel the WTF bubbling under your breath. There's a mix of fonts you would never choose. There's no icebreaker at the beginning of the agenda, and you always like to start with an icebreaker. Do you stop what you're doing, take the 15 minutes to give this employee feedback on their font choices and the importance of building rapport through an icebreaker question? Or do you look at it objectively? That's a preference of yours. It is not a company policy, not a requirement for your meetings to start with an icebreaker. They wouldn't actually learn anything to be better at their job with that feedback. Their agenda actually covers everything you need to cover in the meeting. It's just not technically how you would do it. The more you get comfortable with letting go of how you would do things based on preference, the more freedom you will have. Now, this also goes the other way. There is a term called ruinous empathy from Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor. You are so concerned with not hurting their feelings, or you are so concerned with building a relationship that you hold back giving feedback. Now, if there is any feedback that falls under that policy category. It's not just a preference. It is the right way to do something. Give that feedback. That is the only way that they'll learn and the only way that they will grow and be better. Okay, so the first delegation secret was preference versus policy. The next delegation secret is a doozy. There's actually 5 levels of delegation. And in order for this to be successful, you have to be very clear on what level you want before you delegate the work. I'm actually pulling this from one of the trainings in our coaching framework. Delegation is not all or nothing. Because there are different levels of delegation determined by your desired outcome and the level of trust you have in the person you are delegating to. So let's cover the 5 levels real quick. Level 1 is carry out instructions. This is asking someone to do exactly as you ask. So you do not want them to deviate from your checklist or deviate from your instructions. This level is very appropriate when your delegate is new or lacks experience, or you have already done all of the work, all of the research, and you've already made a decision. Level 2 is research and report. This is asking someone to research and gather information and then report back to you. This level is appropriate when you have confidence in the employee, but you want to reserve the decision-making for yourself. Level 3 is research and recommend. So in this one, they're not just researching and reporting their research back. They're researching, gathering information, and then providing you with their recommendation. You're asking for the pros, the cons of each option, as well as their opinion on how to proceed. You still are going to give the final authorization to move forward, but you want them to kind of shine a little bit here. So this level is appropriate when you have trust and confidence in the employee, but again, you want to retain authority in the decision. Level 4 is decide and inform. This is asking your employee to make a decision on their own and just tell you what they did after the fact. This means you trust them with the research, you trust them with their decision. You just want to be kept in the loop to avoid any surprises. This level is really appropriate when you have a high level of trust and confidence in your employee, and you just want to be aware of their decisions. This also is appropriate in very low stakes decisions where it doesn't really matter one way or the other. There's no damage that's going to occur on the other side. All right, and then the 5th level, level 5, this is the highest level of delegation you can get, is act independently. This is asking someone to make whatever decisions they believe are best. You're not even requesting that they report back to you. You trust that they will do the right thing and they have your full support. So this level is appropriate when you have just total confidence, total trust in your employee, and usually after you've been working together for a while. The other time this level is very appropriate in delegation is when it requires a high level of specific expertise and you are just utterly out of your depth. So you might be like, hey, I don't know anything about this very particular area of our client work or the business. So I need you as the subject matter expert to handle it, to drive it. So the easiest way to decide what level you want to use in delegation is before you delegate any work, decide the who first. Who will be taking this work on? And then based on the level of trust you have with that person and the criticality of the work itself, decide what delegation level you want to use. The other thing in your role as a second in command to keep in mind is what questions are you going to have to answer for your entrepreneur. So if your CEO, your founder, your entrepreneur is going to be coming to you to answer questions, you are probably going to need to use one of the levels where you are staying informed on all of the decisions that are being made so you can appropriately report up to your CEO. And finally, brainstorm a short checklist of requirements that have to be checked off in order to hit the mark. So if they check these things off, I know they have absolutely nailed it, regardless of my preference, right? Regardless of what fonts are used or if an icebreaker is on the top of the agenda, I need to define what success looks like at the beginning before I hand off this project. And last, going back to preference versus policy, especially for you as a second in command, the exception to the rule is when it is the entrepreneur or the CEO's preference. Okay, and you know that this is true. That becomes policy. Here is a very specific example from my past. The CEO hated when the company name was shortened to an initialism. So if the company name was Acme Business Solutions, he hated when people referred to the company as ABS. So in that case, yes, it was a preference. There was nothing technically in the company policy that said never refer to the company as ABS, always use the full company name. But I would absolutely give corrective feedback to anyone that used ABS, even though it didn't affect the quality of their work. So what seems like no big deal to you will always feel like a bigger deal to an entrepreneur because everything is more personal. Keep that in mind, that if it is just a preference of your entrepreneur, treat it more like policy. All right, guys, I'm so excited for another year together. To find show notes and links for anything mentioned in this episode, visit secondfirst.com/57. Be sure to subscribe to catch future episodes and leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening on. Remember, you don't have to navigate being a second in command alone when you have the right hand roadmap.